there, and welcome to the I Never Knew podcast, also known as Inc. This show dives into the life experiences of people who have been through it all and have come through the other side stronger, better, and triumphant. Each story is raw, authentic, and, at times, heartbreaking. One thing joins it all together: the fact that the stories can help the listener learn and grow. Hosted by life coach Maureen, she sits down each episode with a new guest who will empower the listener to set out on their self-discovery journey and start to heal. Now you'll be joined by Maureen and her special guest. Please enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of I Never Knew Inc., but My Dog Did podcast. I am Maureen Scanlon, your host, author, speaker, podcast entrepreneur, and lover of all things love, I guess we could say, and light. Once again, as I am always redundant on saying this, and I don't care, another fabulous guest is in front of me today, and I get to learn so much from him. And I think today's subject is going to be amazing to everyone who's in business or even in life. When you've been told you can't do something, he's going to help us really reinforce: don't listen to those outside voices, listen to yourself. So today's guest is John Follis, and he worked on Madison Avenue in New York City for some of the top ad agencies before co-founding his own. In 4 years, his small agency became one of the most award-winning in the country. So it's almost like actors. There's no small parts, only small actors. And same thing, no small ad agencies, only small beliefs. So career highlights for him include being selected as one of New York's top ad executives. He wrote for Adweek. He was invited to speak at Yale, and he was honored at the White House for a successful public service campaign. Can't wait to hear about that. But before any of that, and here we are, here's his I Never Knew story. I was fired 4 times and told I'd never succeed in the business. In recent years, he's been able to focus on personal projects, which include writing and producing a documentary, which won a Hollywood Film Award. Yay! And writing and producing a 10-part video series about the ad business. And he does volunteer work, including tutoring kids and Ukrainians with English. So how fabulous. Everybody, welcome John Follis.
Thank you, Maureen. Thanks for having me on your show. Great to be here.
We're so honored to have you. And we were talking off air before we started, and there's so much in my brain that I'm like, I need to pick his brain in this hour and get all of this information. So as we start off, obviously it's I Never Knew, it's inspiring stories. We're going to start off with my last guest that I talked to. He said it's a moment that brought him to his knees, and I'm going to start calling him knee moments. So what was your story that, just brought you to your knees and really changed things for you?
Well, I can't honestly say that I was brought to my knees. I was certainly knocked down many times. But I always had a belief, I guess you could say, in my talent that I hoped would have the opportunity to show itself in the right situation. And, as you mentioned in the intro, I was fired 4 times, and that's just not 4 times. I was 4 times in 8 years, which is a lot. I mean, it's a lot to get fired 4 times, but to have it within that time span can make you really question whether or not you chose the right career, especially when you had a college instructor tell you in your first advertising class that basically you suck and should not pursue advertising as a career. Because at that point, you're very vulnerable, right,
Yeah.
to authority figures. And I went to Syracuse University, where they would fly a lot of New York City ad guys up to teach the classes there. And this particular instructor was a Madison Avenue advertising guy. So when someone with those credentials tells you what he told me, it's hard not to take it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the problem for me was I was more than halfway through my college curriculum, and I couldn't kind of pull a U-turn and try something else. I was kind of I was in pretty deep at that point. My dad was paying the tuition, and fortunately, the way the curriculum was set up at Syracuse, they had multiple instructors teaching the same class. This was a required class that I had to do well. So even though I ended up dropping the class with that instructor, I was able to give it another shot with a different instructor, hoping that it was less about me and more about the instructor why I wasn't doing well. And that turned out to be the case.
I love that because, sometimes it looks like this roadblock and it's just a speed bump. So find a way around it. And I love that you did that. What stands out for me is that one of the first things you just said was, I had a belief in my talent. And then you had this really, credentialed instructor, someone who's been in the business, who's probably very respected, say, you really suck and you're never going to make it. And I think that's such an important thing in our lives, is when we're able to stay true to ourselves and just say, I know it doesn't look like it, and I know I'm not hearing any affirmations. I have to stay true to myself. And you did that. And that's inspiring in itself.
Yeah, the fact that it was pretty clear from the first couple of classes. Oops, I should have done this earlier.
No worries.
It was pretty clear to me, Maureen, from the very first class with this guy, that he was kind of an egomaniac.
Yeah.
That was obvious to me. So right off the bat, I kind of realized that this could be a challenging class with this guy, because it seemed to be, just based on his vibe and the things he was saying, that it was all about him and flattering him and kissing his ass and things like that, which actually was a very important lesson for me to learn, because there were many, many people. He would just be the first of many egocentric personalities that I would have to deal with working in an industry like advertising in a city like New York.
Oh, I can imagine what competition in New York must be huge.
Right. So I didn't realize it at the time, because it was really a painful thing to hear him tell me that I sucked. It was actually a very good lesson for me to learn very early on, because, like I said, I would come across a lot of people like him in the next few years of my career.
Yeah, people are either teaching us or testing us. And you're right. And what was neat about what you just said is I recognized it was about him, and I could see his personality had some narcissistic traits, and he was kind of, egocentric. And that's important, I think, when we're in the world too, is, a lot of times the people we run into that are really difficult, it's not about us, it's about them. And we have to try not to personalize that. And you did really well learning that early on, because you're right. More are going to come along the way in life. They're never going to stop coming. It's how am I going to view them?
Yeah. And of course, at the time, I didn't have the perspective I have now. It's easy for me to look back on this. At the time, it was really difficult, because even though it was pretty obvious to me that he was narcissistic, he was still a Madison Avenue guy who knew a lot more than I did about the business. So I wasn't at all sure that I was right and he was wrong.
Yeah, right. It's, and that's it. And you're young and you're not in the business. So it's, you're like, oh, I trust this guy. I can imagine when we're young and impressionable, especially when you say, I didn't have the perspective, you mean you never knew? Because that's why we're here, is, those things that we just never knew.
Right.
So you go out into the world, and do you get a good job right away, or do you start your business? Tell us how you proceeded to get past that, because you graduated, obviously, and stuck to believing in yourself.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a non-city environment. So even though everyone who graduated Syracuse with a degree in advertising essentially went directly to New York to look for work, I was too intimidated by New York. So I wasn't ready to move back to Hamden, Connecticut, where I grew up. But one of my instructors had worked in Atlanta, Georgia for a while and had new people down there. So I started my career in Atlanta. And that was an interesting experience. I was actually told by one creative director that I had a Yankee portfolio. I'm still not sure what that means.
Really, right? What does that exactly mean? Did you ever find out what that does mean?
Yeah,
Or
I kind of, now thinking back on it, I kind of it meant that it was a little, Atlanta is a very polite city, and the South in general is a very polite. The whole demeanor of everyone down there is polite, right? And even though I don't consider myself a New Yorker, I did grow up 2 hours outside of New York, and a lot of my work had a bit of attitude to it. It had a bit of an edge to it, which I think is what made it good because it was a bit provocative. But that kind of style wasn't really received well in Atlanta when I went down there, and
Oh,
I think that's kind of what he meant. I didn't realize it at the time, but now again,
yeah.
looking back with perspective, I think that's what he was saying to me.
Oh, that makes sense. And I hadn't really thought about that till now. And listeners, maybe you're on board with me. Demographics are important in the ad and marketing agency. You even though you want to be nationwide and worldwide, it has to be either universal, or if you're going to be in a specific area, you've got to have that edge in New York where you got to be a little bit softer, and maybe in Arizona where I'm at, it's got to be a little bit different. So
Sure.
I have always said to my husband, especially in Super Bowl, and I know this is probably cliche, but I love the ads during the Super Bowl. And I've always told my husband, I respect these ad people. To take that creativity and to come up with something so unique we haven't seen before, for you to sell a bag of chips is
Right.
it's amazing. It's a gift. It really is a gift. So let's do the ins and the outs. So we always see people sitting around a room at an ad agency and throwing ideas out, and they got the whiteboard. How far off am I to the reality of what having an ad agency is and being in the advertising business?
So in the ad business, and again, we're talking, a long time ago when I was involved with it, but I don't think it's changed a whole lot in the big agencies anyway. Um, Basically, there's a creative team that involves a art director and a copywriter. I started out as an art director, but I was trained at Syracuse to think very conceptually. So unlike a lot of art directors that were just really good when it came to the design and not so much the writing or the concept, um, I was trained to be good at that as well. But I would be paired in those early days with a copywriter, and we would be given an assignment to solve a certain marketing problem for a client, and it had all the information, the demographics of who we were targeting, the media that we were using, whether it's TV or print, or back then there was no digital. We're talking 80s right now. So we would have a deadline to come up with some ideas in whatever media we were talking that would help excite people, the viewer, get their attention in a way that would get them to respond to whatever message we were communicating. And then we would have an opportunity to meet with our creative director and basically present the idea, and that it involved a bit of salesmanship.
Oh
You couldn't just
yeah.
say, here's the idea. You had to really kind of set it up. So presentational skills were very important. And I know you know about that. But I was pretty shy. So I realized pretty early on that if I needed to get over my fear of presenting, and pretty early on in my career got involved in some training to do that, public speaking, things like that, because you could have the best idea, but if it wasn't presented with the right setup and the right conviction and energy, you're not going to convince your creative director. But that's basically how it worked. And then if the creative director would either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And the thing about ad agencies is it wasn't just you and your partner working on this assignment. Often they would have 2 or 3 teams competing against each other. So it was kind of like that TV show Survivor,
Okay.
where you had to compete, and if you kept losing a lot, eventually you might find yourself out of work.
Wow, yes. You know what just came to mind was that movie, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, where Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson are in that. And Matthew McConaughey is the ad agency and he's competing against this team of women. And he calls the diamonds for this client, Delore, I think it was Delore Diamonds. And he says, it's ice. And I think that, and they were competitive, just like you said.
Right.
It was like Survivors, like, my idea has to win. You have to convince the client. And it sounds really actually pretty fun. I mean, when you say concept, to me, that means clever. I've got to out clever someone. And I just think that's the fun of having competition. I think in the world we go, oh, I don't want competition. I absolutely want competition because it makes me better. And so great description.
Yeah, it was scary though, because the people that I was dealing with who had jobs at I worked at some of the biggest and best agencies. So you're competing, it's like the big leagues, and you're competing against the most talented people in the country. I mean, this is why they're in New York, right? New York is the mecca for advertising. So anyone who's in New York and anyone who is working at a big agency is the best at what they do. And also very ambitious. I mean, these people, the ambition of people that you're competing against is pretty intense. So it may seem like fun, and a lot of it was fun, but it was also really, really stressful.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
God.
what often played a role in your success was your political skills. I was trained to think, Maureen, that my success would be 100% determined by my talent. And what I realized fairly quickly in these big agency environments that was only a part of what enabled you to be successful. And dare I say, a much smaller part than I thought it would take. That the much bigger part was how well you were able to figure out the lay of the land and the political waters that you had to deal with, and how well you were able to manipulate and work with and kiss up to the right people. And that was something I was not prepared for. I was not trained for. I wasn't good at. And I thought that I didn't have to deal with. And I said, I don't want to have to learn how to do that. And I just listened to a podcast recently by a coach who actually said, if you try to convince yourself that this is something you don't have to deal with or you don't want to deal with, you will lose by default.
You're 100% right. And I worked in corporate for, 27 years. And you're right. It was never about how good I was at my job. It was, you had to understand the different personalities and you did have to kind of cater to people. And I think there it is. There's the thread, John, where I always say, my guest, there's got to be a thread here. It was against the grain for you and I, because it's not who we are. That's not our personality. We're not about competing and doing dirty and, having to kiss up to people. We feel like we should just be who we are. And that doesn't always translate in corporate world or in, this high level like you were in New York. And it's sad that's the way the world is. But I can say this, I think that's why we have more entrepreneurs than ever. Because I think everybody is more in tune with, I'm going to do what I want. I'm tired of working for someone, doing something to raise their value, not raise mine.
Yes. And some people do it by choice. And some people like me do it because they kept getting their ass kicked out of companies. And at a certain point say, maybe I should try a different strategy for my career.
Yes. And so when we talk about those 4 firings, I mean, I'm looking at you and thinking, man, he's so personable and he just sounds like you were amazing at what you did. So my first thought was, you weren't supposed to be in that environment. And so what was a common reason to get fired in that?
Well, 2 of them I could say definitively why. And maybe you can appreciate this. I was brought in and hired by a creative director who would have been my manager because he liked me and thought I was talented, and then decided to leave the agency for a better job within weeks after he brought me in. And that happened to me twice. And if you're in that tribal political environment, and you don't have a tribe leader who is protecting you and wants you to be there because you're working with him and for him, you are going to be more vulnerable to the other tribal members who want to get rid of you, maybe because you are talented and they see you as a threat,
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind when you said that was other people's insecurities can sometimes send you on a different trajectory because they have the political thing down or they have the manipulation down. And you're right. And I always say, sometimes the boat gets rocked and sometimes it gets flipped over. And I think the inspiring part of this is when something happens like that, rather than going, and you're allowed to, I validate as a life coach, you're allowed to say that really sucked. And man, I'm kind of lost right now. But you got to get out of that pretty quick and say, okay, well, if that happened, then I must be meant for something different. And I tell everyone knows my mantra, nothing meant for you will ever miss you. And so it sends you in a different direction. So after those 4 firings, did you finally just say, I think I get the lesson now. I think maybe I should do something different?
Well, I started getting turned on to the idea of freelance fairly early on in my career when one of the guys I worked for had a friend who owned a pizza place and needed a logo and came to me. This was one of the jobs I did not get fired from, and I had a good relationship with some of the business guys, and this was a buddy of his, and he came to me and he said, he'll pay you some money if you do this logo. And was called, I didn't know that that's what people did. And he was fine with me doing that on the side for his friend while I was working at this staff job. So I knew what freelance was about. So I think maybe after the second or third time, even though I was still trying to get myself back into a big agency, I was also exploring freelance opportunities. I just didn't do that, make that a full-time focus until after the 4th time of getting fired. And at that point, I said, screw trying to get a big job at another agency. At that point, I think I had a couple of freelance things going on. And I said, let me see what happens if I put all of my energy into freelance and see where that takes me. So that was kind of the transition or the pivot, if you will, that I did in my career. And that turned out to be a good decision.
Yeah. So we have like this path and on John's questionnaire, listeners, it's neat to see, we were talking off air how, you pivot a lot in business and you just see which one you have a lot more energy for, what feels best. And so he went from ad agency to the online marketing and consulting, which I'm sure all of you that are starting businesses or in business can get a lot of information from. I knew nothing 5 years ago when I started my business and wrote books. I'm like, what is this marketing thing? My daughter graduated with a PR and marketing degree. God love her, but she was like, it's going to take time, mom, or you have to do it this certain way, mom. I would just throw posts up and she'd go, no, 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 let me redo that. Let me put your logo. Let me put your colors. And so I knew nothing about marketing. Now I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I would definitely say I'm above beginner. Tell us, what are some crucial things in marketing for businesses that are starting?
Well, just to give you some clarity on the timeline, the pivot that I just referenced earlier happened pre-internet still. I'm an old guy, so my career started in a long time ago. So this pivot to freelance was still in the late 80s, I think. Okay. And after doing that for a few years, that attracted a sales guy who saw some of my work and wanted to talk to me about pitching clients directly, because he was a business development guy looking for a top creative talent to team up with to go after clients directly. Oh. And that enabled he and I to eventually start an ad agency, which in 4 years became really, really successful, because I was really good at the creative side and he was really good at the business development side. So it was a good partnership in that sense. It wasn't until that partnership ran its course after a few years, and now we're talking in the late 90s, that I was kind of doing my own thing, still kind of seeing myself as an advertising agency guy, but that was when the internet was becoming more relevant. And I realized that when I was talking to a lot of small business owners, many of them, all of them needed marketing help, but they didn't really want to talk about advertising. They didn't have money to spend on media, paid media advertising. And because the internet was becoming more and more relevant, the questions had to do more with their website and banner ads and email lists and all the things that were popular in the late 90s that any business owner had to deal with. So that's when I realized I had to maybe pivot again and maybe do a rebranding of myself and not stop calling myself an ad agency guy and stop calling myself a marketing guy, and started, this is when Skype came on the scene in the early 2000s. And I got a call from a woman who she was begging me for help, but she didn't need any advertising help. She really needed coaching with marketing and some of the things you just asked me about. And at the time, Maureen, I didn't really have a model that enabled me to work one-on-one, like on an hourly basis with someone. I didn't think that was a good business model. I was working on retainers, where they would pay you X amount a month.
Yeah.
And it will for a contract for 6 months or something like that. So, you weren't doing money for time, which I thought was not a good business model. But this woman wouldn't let me get off the phone. She said, I need your help. And that's when I figured, well, let me just come up with an hourly rate that she probably can't afford. And I came up with something. This was in 2004. And I think the rate I said was $250 an hour back in 2004. And I didn't expect her to say yes, but she had heard me give a presentation and was really impressed by a talk I gave. And she saw some of my ads around New York that she knew I did. And she was also highly referred to me. So when you've got that kind of triple threat that someone is convinced that there's no way they're going to say no to basically whatever dollar, I think I probably could have said $400 an hour and she might have said yes. But I thought that was a fair rate at the time, and she said yes. And when she left my office and wanted to continue meeting with me after that, because you can't get really any, you're just starting after the first hour of conversation. You know that as a coach. I realized that maybe I can try to continue working with this business model, and that's when because of Skype, I said if I can find entrepreneurs, not just in New York, but around the country, there's no reason if I can turn them on to this coaching that I'm doing that I couldn't leverage this and basically make money doing what you and I are doing right now, at a pretty decent rate. I said, I could, this could be a business model I could get excited about. So that started what I called marketing therapy. That's how I branded it.
Oh, I like it. I like it. You're like the OG of business coaching.
Right. So again, I tried to keep my finger on the pulse of the changing media landscape and technology. And I mentioned to you earlier that I got into podcasting a couple of years after that. In 2006, I was doing podcasting and blogging. So that became a new business model that I did for the next 10 or 15 years, in addition to more traditional kind of advertising where I was still doing ads and writing taglines and, whatever other clients wanted me to do. But a lot of it just had to do with hours of this kind of thing. And often what would happen, Maureen, is once we got to a comfort level, a lot of times they didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't know what they needed. They thought they needed one thing. And after a couple of hours of talking, I would say, well, have you ever considered a tagline for your business? And they'd say, well, no. How are you branding yourself? And they wouldn't even think of branding, because when they hear the word branding, they think of Coke and McDonald's. And they would thought, well, that's not even something that's relevant to me as a small business owner. And my response to them was, well, what do you think marketing therapy is? That's the way I'm branding myself, and it's just me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I kind of evolved into business coaching as well as I started life coaching. I mean, and I think life coaching entails everything, but when people had come just specifically for business coaching, I did the same thing. I came up with these ideas. I had a wonderful client who came, he was actually a podcast guest, and then he reached out after and said, hey, I want you to life coach me. And we started business coaching. And he said, Maureen, I've been trying to figure out where to go with this business for 2 years. And in 1 hour, you helped me figure out what my niche is. And that's it. We just need someone to say, you got to break it down. We really have to narrow it down to the details. And I just think you were the OG of starting this business coaching, which no one really thought of it for entrepreneurs. Always this big, corporations and teams and that sort of thing. So what do you think is crucial? So for instance, Maureen Scanlon Life Coaching. I have a brand. I have a color story. Everybody knows I'm on every social media platform. So what do you think is the most important thing for an entrepreneur to get that name out there, to get that brand, to get noticed and be visible for starting off their businesses?
Well, the most important thing comes out of what I just shared with you, and that is, and what you just shared with me, is that if you try to do it yourself, as much as you might be as smart and talented as you may be, and as despite how much desire you have to market yourself, the problem is that you're not going to have the perspective that you need. You're always going to you're not going to be looking at your business objectively. You'll be looking at it from the inside out, and you're going to miss things that someone like me or you, when you coach people, that they're never going to see, simply because they don't have that perspective that they need. As you just pointed out, you spoke to someone, and in an hour, he said, you were able to see something that I've been missing for years.
Yeah.
So as much as on these podcasts, I talk to a lot of people like yourself who are looking for me to give them some pearl of wisdom that they could, and I'd be happy to try to do that. But the biggest pearl of wisdom I could say is find someone that does that really, really well that you can trust. And if you're not sure, and it's really tough because a lot of marketing people are really slick salespeople. And it's really, really hard to tell whether or not they know what they're talking about or they're just good at selling themselves, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've all been scammed. Even me. I was scammed early on in the business and I learned how to do homework.
Right. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you should give up trying to find someone, because if you really want to grow your business, scale your business, you're going to have to bring people on, team members on, that you can delegate the things that are not your expertise. And I'm not saying that as a business owner, you should totally agree with everything that a marketing person says. You should be obviously involved with it. But just like you would hire a bookkeeper, an accountant, a lawyer, any people who are professionals in the service industry that know stuff that you don't, to help you grow your business, the same is true with marketing. And the way I would suggest you do it is never make it's like dating someone, right? Don't go on a first date with someone and try to have them convince you that you guys should get married. If they don't have a way that allows you to get to know them, to date them, to decide if you want to continue dating them, then find someone else. Don't let them entrap you to say you've got to commit to working with me for 3 months, or you've got to buy my program for $1,000 or whatever. With my consulting, I had different plans. I had short-term therapy, long-term therapy, initial consultation for a couple hours, a minimum of 2 hours. I just realized that 1 hour was never enough. So my minimum was 2 hours, but that's how I began working with people. And it was that enabled. So to answer your question, I would, again, I know you're trying to look, listen, it's about creating good content. When you're talking social media, to answer your question, ultimately, to a simple answer to your question, you got to continue creating great content, especially video content. I've always been big on video. I've been involved with video since the late 90s. And another pivot I did in 2013, because I realized a lot of people had pretty good websites, but they didn't have a lot of good video content on their websites. They didn't have a YouTube channel. And I'd been involved with videos from the late 90s and as a creative person, loved creating great video content. I started a business called Big Idea Video. Okay. So I was offering that because a lot of people said, well, I don't need marketing help, but almost everyone needed better video or good video. A lot of them had no video at all. So that's the kind of content right now. TikTok is all the rage. You should at least Instagram, which started out as pictures, now has become a video platform with Reels. That's what they're all about now. So once you create good video content, you could repurpose it. You can put it on your website. Everyone should have a YouTube channel that they can keep adding more content to. There's all kinds of styles of videos. There's these explainer kind of videos. There's these testimonial videos. When I say videos, there's a dozen kinds of videos that you can create. So you just have to figure, based on what your business is, your product or service, you've got to create videos that it's all about exciting people. What I say is that marketing, informing people is not enough. That only does part of the job with marketing. If you don't also excite people, it doesn't matter what you say, because you're not going to get them to respond.
Yeah.
So, and that's where some creativity comes in. That's where, if you look at any successful marketing campaign, there's a creative element to it. You talked about the Super Bowl commercials. The reason why you liked them is because they were creative, they were entertaining, they excited you, right?
Yeah.
It made you laugh, they made you pay attention. They were creative, and this is a core, one of my core skill sets. So I would love, well, after consulting, I would love to then have the opportunity to figure out, depending on what they needed, whether it was a tagline or some copy or some Instagram posts or some video content, to then apply my creativity to help them communicate their message.
Yeah.
This is something, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, what an advantage too, to have you as a consultant who has all of this background in the ad, world, because you do know, you have way more insight into what grabs people's attention. And I really love that.
A lot of video content creators come at it from the video production side, where they know how to produce a video, they know how to work all the bells and whistles on their smartphone. With TikTok, use all the filters and all the special effects, and all that's great. But if you don't come at it from a strategic standpoint, one of the things I learned from working at the big agencies is that you have to have the right strategy. Yeah. You can't even begin to think about the right message until you have the right strategy. So it starts with the strategy, and then you have to figure out what the right message is and what the right words are. And then you could figure out what are the right words and the images to tell the story, and how you do that in a creative way quickly. And that's the other thing is, I was trained with TV. We didn't have TikTok and YouTube back then, but we had 30-second commercials. And if you don't get someone's attention in the first 5 seconds, it doesn't matter what you say or do in the next 25 seconds, because you've lost them. They're going to change the channel. So even though it was a long time ago, a lot of it hasn't changed from what I was trained to do back then. It's all about grabbing people with the right message quickly in a way that's going to want them to pay attention and hear your message. So, I'm still passionate about it. I don't have to do it anymore, which, is fun. I love talking about it. I love sharing it, because I still have a passion for talking about it. And listen, if someone is determined to work with me and they want to talk about it, I will listen to them. I will decide if there's someone I want to work with and they've got a product or service that I believe in. But the beauty of it is I don't have to do it. I can do my personal project and spend more time talking to people like you. I love sharing. I've done a lot of podcasts, and I love sharing stuff like this on podcasts. So again, thanks for having me to talk about it.
You're in the get to phase, which I love. You get to do this. I think that's amazing. And you're right. It's not that much different, except I think what I've noticed, especially in my coaching practice, is our attention spans have diminished so much. I mean, TikTok, if you don't grab me right away, boop, I'm done. Even dating now with, the dating app, swipe. Right. So yeah, you've got to be extra creative. I think today, you're right, in the video world or in the ad world, or just, in your platforms all together. And, I think with mine, I've learned I have to grab different kinds of people. Some people really want a motivational quote for my life coaching. Some people want something funny. My whole brand is the dogs, the books, everything, the titles of everything in my life is getting inspiration and being, living life like these dogs. So I have a lot of dog posts. Well, everybody has a dog. Just about everybody has a dog or has been around a dog or loves a dog. So I have found variety is really important, and the different ways of being out there, like a Facebook group, an Instagram, like you said, you got to have content. But I have noticed, and see if you'll validate me, I do not like being saturated with someone's business. And I have this person on my Facebook, and it's driving me crazy. Every day she does a video and she tags at everyone. And it drives me crazy. And I see the same stuff all day, every day from her, or 5 times a day. There's a such thing is too much. I want to be visible, but I don't do more than one post on each platform a day, because I don't want people to be like, oh God, it's Maureen again. She's probably talking about dogs and life coaching. No, I want it to be like, what's Maureen going to post today? Is that good advice to say, don't saturate people with your information?
There's a saying in the advertising business is that no one ever makes a decision to buy something until they've seen your message something like 7 or 9 times. So I think the bigger mistake that marketers make is they don't post enough. So the thing about this person that you said, chances are there's so many ways to automate postings right now.
Yeah.
So because otherwise you'd spend your entire 24 hours in a day creating and posting stuff to people. So maybe she's got some kind of automated function that, puts all this stuff out. Now you should be able to turn her off, right? To unfollow her on Facebook or turn off her messages.
Yeah.
So I suspect that, it'd be interesting if you were able to talk to her, whether or not that strategy is working for her or not. Because just as you described, everyone is different and everyone digests information differently. While you happen to be seeing her messages multiple times a day and being sick of her, there may be many other people that is not the case for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and again, maybe she figures, well, let me do it. And if I'm bugging anyone, they can just turn me off. But I'd rather err on the side of constantly being in front of people. You know what I'm saying?
And I can totally understand that. And you know what? I say try everything, see what works for you. I think the angle I'm coming at is I've seen a lot of people say, stop tagging people in at everyone. And if people want something and you post and they're friends with you, they're going to know. There's probably not a lot of people in my almost 5,000 friends on Facebook that don't know what I do, because I post things about my books. I post about the podcast. I post about the coaching. So if they want it, they will come when they're ready. And I can't post 10 times a day and make them be more ready, I think is the angle that.
Well, let me just add to what I said, because you just mentioned something that I just want to qualify my response to. When you tag someone on Facebook or LinkedIn, that's a very personal thing.
Yeah.
That's different than just posting a lot and not tagging people.
Okay.
So when I responded to your question, I didn't fully acknowledge what you had mentioned, that you are being tagged.
Yeah.
That's pretty invasive.
Yeah.
For someone to be doing that. So I wouldn't suggest that what she's doing by tagging people is something that I would recommend on a regular basis. Occasionally, once or twice or something, that's okay, but not as often as you described this person's doing it.
Yeah, I agree. If you're doing a book launch and you want to tag, and it says at everyone, which means you're going to get everyone on your list attention. Okay, if you want to do that for a book launch, or you're doing something great, you got an award. I'm with you. Let's get affirmation. But when you're doing this every single day, people are like, look, I know where to find you. You'll come up on my feed. So I'm glad that we clarified that, because I do not tag I don't tag anybody unless they're, specifically involved in it, in the podcast or,
Well, that's the thing about marketing that I think everyone should realize is that there's a right way and a wrong way. It's just not just do marketing.
Yeah.
It's like, how are you doing your marketing? Because if you don't do it the right way, not only won't it attract people, it will turn people off.
Mic drop. That's what I was getting at.
It will have the exact opposite effect.
Yes. Yes. Because we know how that feels.
It'll turn prospective customers into enemies.
Yes.
And they will start sharing what you just shared with me about this person. You didn't give her name, but they will begin to hate you if you become obnoxious or you do it the wrong way.
Yeah. No, that's exactly where I was. I was going down that path. Thank you. You will turn people off when you do too much. And I'm okay with marketing. And there are, people I think that saturate a little bit too much. And so I'll, I won't unfriend, but I'll just, pass by. I think I always want to be encouraging to anybody in being an entrepreneur, and I support everybody in following their dreams. So whatever they need to do to figure it out, I'm all about that. So with 5 minutes left, we're going to wrap up. I always ask everyone, every guest at the end of the podcast, you're marching down Main Street and there's 100,000 people behind you. You've got a banner and your banner says, what about how you want to change the world?
I would say figure out how to help people.
Ooh.
I mean, it's just a very simple thought, but find a need and fill it, and find a need that you know how to fill. There are a lot of needs out there that I would be the last person to try to fill.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, for example, I just started doing tutoring for Ukrainians who want to learn English. Well, I know how to speak English. So that's an easy gig for me.
I love
you know
that.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. Finding purpose and helping others. I love this. Shouldn't that be the bottom line? Anyway, it's called Ikigai. It's a Japanese philosophy of finding your purpose. And it's, what are you good at? What can you make money at? What do you love to do? What are you passionate about? Where's the need? And that's exactly what you just said. Figure out how to help people. That's the bottom line of business and of life. How do we help one another and support one another? So I think that's amazing. So you are my guinea pig today. And I used to ask, what is your shameless self-indulgence? But I'm changing it up today, John. And I'm so happy that it's you, my very first person. I'm starting a new question, and it's a little series I'm going to do, or I might just keep going and change it up. But it's called Take My Money. And what I have found is, since you're an ad guy on Facebook, I get so many ads for different stuff, and whether they're spying on my husband and I in our conversations or whatever, however they pop up, I don't care. I'm a sucker. I buy. And I just bought some awesome shoes for my husband off of Instagram. So these ads work. So the Take My Money segment that I'm going to do is, I want to ask you, what is the weirdest thing you've ever seen for sale? And this could be anything from a yard sale to an online eBay, or I want to hear some wacky, weird, wonderful stuff.
Well, geez, with that setup, I'm almost hesitating to respond, because I'm afraid I may have to disappoint you, because I don't spend a lot of time looking at that stuff.
You are disappointing me. No, I'm just kidding.
I know you were looking for some kind of, hopefully your other guests will have a different response, but
okay, let me reroute you. What is your social media feed, if they're geared toward advertising toward John? What does your feed have as far as these ads? What do you think?
You mean what kind of ads are
Yeah.
showing up on my stuff?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, you would know better than I would because it sounds like you know more about this stuff than I do. But I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook these days.
I love
Um,
it. I love it.
I,
My ad guy isn't paying attention to ads. This is great.
well, yeah, um, I just, there's no reason for me really to do that. I was hacked on Facebook about a year ago, and
Oh,
I couldn't log back into my site, and I had to start from scratch with a new Facebook page. At the time, I think I had a bunch of quote friends on Facebook, and I was more active with it. But once I got hacked and had to start a new page, I think now I've got like 6 friends on Facebook.
you're gonna have 7 after today, but oh, that's frustrating because it takes a long time to build that up. And I bet you took a little reprieve and said, "Well, I don't really need it that much."
Well, yeah, I just realized that most of the people that quote I had as friends on Facebook really weren't. And I just found that I didn't really miss it. When it first came out, years ago, I was all over it. But just in recent years, I think like a lot of things go in cycles.
Yeah.
And I spend more time scrolling through TikTok now
Yeah.
than I do on anything else, just
Oh.
because I just find it very entertaining.
I know, I know. All the dogs. Once you like a dog video, you're in the club, man. It's nonstop, which I love because
They're hilarious.
I know they're so much fun. So I'm gonna do the take my money segment. And the one thing that I saw recently was a human dog bed, which would be perfect for me. I mean, hello, I could just lay there with the dogs. I don't need to, get up into a bed. And it was literally just this human sized dog bed. And it just looks so comfy, that really soft, fluffy material.
Yeah.
And it's showing people laying, watching TV in this dog bed, which I don't know what the psychology behind it, even with my psychology background, but I'm guessing it's just that safe, secure space. So yeah, I'll take a human dog bed, take my money, and yeah, it's we're gonna start this new segment because I'm finding really, really crazy stuff online, on Facebook groups. They have like secondhand finds where you find, people find stuff at the thrift stores and stuff that are just weird and wacky. And I think they're hilarious. They crack me up. So
Yeah. Well, that's a good one. I can understand the lure of a human dog bed because they do look super cozy, right?
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's why dogs like to curl up in there. I call it the cinnamon roll. I'm like, oh, look, Jade is in her cinnamon roll. So, yeah, we want a cinnamon roll. It's kind of a back to the fetal position where we felt safe. So, I get it. Good marketing, people. Yay. Good job, human dog bed marketing people. So, John, I want to thank you so much for being here. You gave so much information. I appreciate your story. You're being vulnerable. It's not easy to tell people, hey, I've been fired 4 times, but it also gives people that encouragement that sometimes bad things happen to motivate us to do the thing that we really should be doing and following our passions and our hearts. And the one thing that you said that I hope sticks with everyone is at the very beginning, he said, I believed in my talent. And I hope everybody takes that away today. So I hope you had fun today, John.
I did, Maureen. Again, it was great chatting with you. And I think it's great that you're putting out all this positive, inspirational content out there. So
Well,
good luck with all that stuff. And
thank you.
have fun with your dog bed.
I don't know if I can talk the husband into buying that one for me, but yeah, we shall see. So, listeners, thank you so much, all of you, for being here. We are blowing up. It's great. So excited you're all sharing the podcast with your friends and inviting all your friends. I do have a really long waiting list to be guests. So, get on the list right now and do those 5-star reviews. Share it, subscribe so they come out every Wednesday. I may be going to 2 times a week in 2023. So you may get 2 episodes a week. So I'm so grateful to all of you. I'm grateful to John for giving me the hour of his life. That was a gift for me and for you listeners. So everyone, be happy, be well, as we are going into the holidays coming up soon. So love your people and nurture those relationships. You never know how long you have with one another. So cherish those. Thank you so much. And we will see you next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to the I Never Knew podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring and educational, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and spread the word. The more people that join the Inc. community, the more it can develop and influence others as we work together for a healthier and brighter future. Until next time.